Okay, hi, this is Yvette Francino with my second interview from Carpe Diem Connections, and I'm so excited because I have what I'm going to refer to as a happiness hero here, Pamela Gail Johnson, and she started this happiness movement before positive psychology was even a thing, and it has just blossomed. I mean, the same year, 1998, that the field of positive psychology began. So had you even heard of positive psychology when you started the Happiness Happens month?
I was working in the mental health field at the time, so I certainly heard of it once all the research started coming out which started coming out in 1998. I'm pretty sure I'd probably heard of that it was coming out at that particular point, but it certainly wasn't the main. Inner child type work was more the focus of mental health at that point. So it certainly wasn't mainstream, and it took a while for it to become that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you were a pioneer in the whole field. So, I'm just in awe. That's wonderful that you saw a need about spreading happiness before the rest of the world saw that, and now it's become really trendy. I mean, it's out there all over. There's all kinds of self-help books, but you were there before all of that, and that's pretty incredible.
Well, I think what's always made the society unique, and we're now just the society of happy people, is that we never really tell people that you need to be happy per se. I probably don't even like that phrase that says you're as happy as your mind, you make up your mind to be, so that quote. Because I do think life happens, and when life is happening, sometimes it's not happy. And if you don't allow yourself to go through that experience, even when it's unpleasant, it's really hard also then to be happy, because there's this denial factor in it. But the society has always been about, notice those moments, even if they're not maybe quite the type of happiness. And I would say in our pandemic world, we're kind of there. You might not be experiencing the kind of happiness, that you normally would for, say, your summer vacation or whatnot. It's maybe different. So maybe you're not getting that same excitement and exuberance that you would normally get, but maybe you still had a lot of happy moments. And even if they weren't what you expected, go ahead and embrace those regardless of what else is going on. So we always want people to come at it from that mindset, like try to count those happy moments as much as you count your unhappy ones,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to keep that balance,
Mm-hmm.
in place. And again, there are times, if you have a loved one in the hospital right now and you can't go see them because you're in a COVID hotspot, you're probably not happy. You got a big cloud of sadness and uncertainty and, following you. That doesn't mean that zero happy moments didn't happen, but they certainly may be, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're over here at the little 2, 3 scale.
Mm-hmm.
You're just grateful somebody offered to pick up your kids or take them to get dinner. They may be, like I said, a little bit not quite the same kind of happiness as if you won $5 on your scratch off lottery ticket, where you're like, oh, I got my Starbucks paid for. But they still happen in the middle of that. So if you can, try to recognize it when you can.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of your book about 31 types is talking about these different types of happiness, including balance, and that life really doesn't mean that you're 100% happy all the time. You do have sadness in your life that needs to be recognized, and you need to process those emotions too. So I hear what you're saying. When you opened your book about 31 types of happiness, you had the quote, "The more you notice the happiness around you, the happier you'll be." And I love that too. I mean, even in times of sadness, I think, again, recognizing others' happiness or seeing the joyful things helps, again, not to erase the things that you do need to process that are sad, but to be able to cope and become resilient and, gain back your own happiness. And so, again, I just think that those recognitions, bringing happiness to the world, helping people understand there are 31 kinds of happiness, and and having more of that in their life is just a super valuable thing that you've brought to the world. So I honor you in that. And you know, I get, even I was reading through your types of happiness, I was thinking about how many you're giving to me today just by being here for this interview. When I'm the newbie interview, you know, a person, you're a super busy woman. You know that I don't yet have a lot of great editing skills, but you still were willing to give me your time to talk to me today. And that is, you know, just, it really is such a thoughtful thing. And so thank you so much for that. Let me
ask me to be on your show so soon. And just FYI for you and your listeners, we do have the SOHP app now that has the happiness counter on it. So if you're ever kind of in like what I call a funk, just pull that out and you go count the types of happiness you had for the last 30 minutes or the last hour. A lot of times you're going to discover you had more than you thought you did. You know, maybe it's just 2 or 3, but maybe if you thought you had 0, 2 or 3 is still more than you thought. And sometimes it can be, I've done, you know, trainings for when we do that, you know, people literally have one happy moment per minute. Cause if I say, oh, dude, and they'll be like, I had 135 for the last 2 hours. You're like, wow, you were super happy. You know?
Yeah, I'm going to download that app. In fact, I've been kind of stalking all the wonderful things that you have out there because you've been doing this for so long. You have a lot of different great ideas and things on your website, the society, and your blog. And one thing I did want to ask you about, and I do want to be sensitive to your time, so I'll try to be brief, but just the Happiness Unites tour is something that really excited me because I love travel and I want to do a snowbird tour coming up. I'm hoping I can do it in this winter. And so tell me about your Happiness Happens tour. You've made a list of 100 happiness things, or tell me more about that.
Well, it's been kind of on pause for the past probably year and a half. I had a personal situation, and it made travel a little bit difficult. But I do plan to resume as soon as travel is a little more friendly, or if you're walking up and talking to a stranger, they're not looking at you like, please stay away. Please stay away from me because I don't know who you are and I don't know where you've been. So, but yes, I have like 100 things where, you know, happiness unites us, because so much of the time I think we feel really divided, and a lot of that has to do with our politics. I mean, we can pretend it doesn't, but it does. I mean, we can sugarcoat that. So we've kind of created this world where you've got red, blue, purple, and different people. We've got like 4, I think of it as in 4 buckets. God bless the purple people, because they get everybody kind of trying to court them. But we sort of forget that, let's say I have a passion for rescuing animals. You know, when you go to do whatever you're doing, whether it's a fundraiser or you're actually at a rescue event or you're fostering, that group of people is like, from a political, some of them are divides, they're all the same. And they're from every demographic. They're from every age group. You have college kids and high school kids that are doing it, and you have people who are retired that are doing it. They're from every ethnic background that, you know, loves pets, because your common interest is this piece that creates happiness. I mean, same thing with sports events and sports teams. You know, when you're sitting there in the stands or at your local pub watching the game with other people, you're not really asking them, you know, do you wear a red or blue hat? Because you're sitting there, you're united in your dislike for the team they're playing and your passion for the team you're rooting for. You're hoping they win. You know, there's just lots of these places and events where those things sort of kind of go out the door, and we sort of have forgotten that, you know, happiness unites us on so many fronts. So I've used it as an opportunity to go meet up with a lot of our members in different places to participate in one of their kind of Happiness Unites events. one of their places. So I've done everything from, I went to Disneyland because I'd never been to Disneyland. I lived in Florida. So I went to, which would be called like one of the happiest places on earth.
Yeah.
So I've done that. I went snow tubing in Iowa with a family. So I've done just a little bit of, like I said, a lot of different kinds of things. I went to a concert in a tiny place called Idlewild, California, which is this huge outdoor concert. I think the town had 1,000 people in it, but I bet 300 of them were at that concert. It was super packed. It's a super community event. And you could just see how connected everyone was. And I think, like I said, it's those kinds of events where we connect with people. That's also where our happiness shows. I mean, if we wanted to look at that science of happiness, the absolute one thing I would tell people, and whether you're an introvert, whether it's pandemic times, whether it's normal times, whether you're a super extrovert, it's your relationships with people that's kind of is really a contributing factor. So I'd say get off of being online and go and meet people. Now, right now we're having to meet people a little bit online, but try to make plans to meet maybe new friends in your community when you can, or go have a social distance coffee with them, or go take a social distance, walk with them. I mean, be responsible, but do your, try to keep those people relationships. Pick up the phone and have a conversation and get off Messenger or text.
Yeah.
Say to somebody, hey, can you talk at 10? I mean, we sort of live in that kind of world now where you're like, if I wasn't planning the 10 minutes for the phone call, I don't have time to do it. And with parents homeschooling and all of these extra activities going on, you want to be respectful, but schedule a phone call, schedule a Zoom call, schedule a FaceTime. Keep that connection with people, because I think that's, if you had to say what's one kind of thing you can do to kind of keep you happy, you need to have those relationships. Now, they also need to be with people who aren't, raining on your parade and making you a little unhappy. But those relationships are super important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's sort of a lot of the point of my new podcast, and my big mission and passion is it's called Carpe Diem Connections. So that's the connections part. And one of my experiments of doing this podcast specifically in COVID-19 is because I do think we can seek out connections of the people who, like you, who have similar passions, who are spreading messages that we are completely on board with, who are kindred spirits. And we can find those people online and make a real life connection. I mean, I hope when you come to Colorado, you will come visit me, and to me, that's super exciting. Something we didn't used to have before the web and social media is we didn't have this ability to reach out and kind of find the thought leaders in our area that we're passionate about and make real connection with them. And I think that's super cool, and something, and an opportunity during COVID-19, not to be restricted by the people that we're going to happen to find in our geographic location, but to find them all over the world. So that's, sort of half of my mission is connection, and the other half is this Carpe Diem idea, which overlaps a lot with happiness. So a big part of that, because I think when we talk about how we want to be living our lives, most of us, the thing that's most important to us is finding happiness, and with people we love. So having the connection and having happiness, or really finding what brings us passion. For me, one of those things is happiness, but it could be art or music or all kinds of things, and really just trying to spend our lives in a way that we find meaningful for ourselves. So that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, how would you, if you had 1 year left to live, how would you spend it? What have you found that's really meaningful in your life?
Oh, wow. don't know that I would spend my life that much different than I spend it now. And you know, I think to some degree, we never know how long we have. So, you know, some people will say, you know, you're supposed to, I think James Dean has, you know, kind of a quote, you know, I think it's James Dean's quote that's kind of live, you know, you're supposed to sort of live like today's your last day.
Yeah,
While you're,
right.
you know,
Live like you were dying. Yeah.
So yeah, live like you're dying, and that's Tim McGraw's song. Yes, and
Yeah.
live like you're dying, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you're waiting to live your life, and that doesn't mean if you're wanting to go to Europe for 3 months that you don't have to say, oh, okay, you know, I may not get to do that till I'm retired because I'm not like a school teacher and I get tons of time off. But a lot of companies now and Happier at Workplace do give people sabbaticals after they've worked somewhere so long. So you never know if that's a possibility. But yeah, you may need to save your money to do that. So I'm not saying go chalk up your credit cards and go spend 90 days doing something. But I think in general, like your day to day, what is it you do when you wake up? You know, again, who are you connecting with? I'm so blessed. I get to connect with, you know, I hear a lot of feedback on the negativity on Facebook, and I sometimes sort of laugh because my feed's usually pretty positive. my feed is probably 90% positive. It's because I'm connected with so many, for the most part, like-minded folks. So it's who are you connecting with? What are you spending your time on? You know, what are you spending your time in a way that's passionate? And that doesn't always have to be your job. A lot of people think that, you know, what they actually do day to day is in their work life is where that has to come from. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's your means. But if you go to that job, even if it's just your means to your life, like what are you doing with your kids, or you're being a soccer coach or a Girl Scout leader, you know, whatever that is for you. Do you do crafts on the side? And you know, that's the means to pay for those things that are important to you. You still want to give your best. And as long as you're giving your best, again, you might not get your most exuberant highs of happiness, but you might get a lot of satisfaction. You might get some of these other types of happiness that are equally important in the grand scheme of our, you know, of our daily life. So like I said, so for me, I probably wouldn't, you know, there's a couple of things I'd probably change, but in general, I wouldn't change. If it was my, you know, last year here, I'd probably be doing, you know, I might have more in-person visits if it wasn't pandemic times, you know, with some people, but I would pretty much kind of do the same thing I do every day.
Yeah. And do you have your own business about Happier at Work? Is that what you do every day?
Yes, we did. Well, we did trainings for about employee engagement. So, and that's kind of been in what I would call a transition period, as managers are now managing more virtual employees, which I think will also become more part of the normal workplace, because so many companies are figuring out they can do it that way. And employees are liking that work-life balance of being able to be home, you know, less time commuting, basically. I mean, basically it's less time commuting. But you do have some employees that do better in an office. Like they need that interaction. So I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think we're just going to become much more more of a hybrid, long-term workforce. Because we can, essentially. But again, some people have a personality that working at home isn't necessarily best for them. Like that's maybe where they get their social, or because they're just super extroverts.
Right.
It's kind of like training online. We're doing trainings online now. You know, personally, I still like the in-person format because I like the people in a training. But we're doing trainings online now, and I think that's also going to stick around more, because companies are going to be like, no, we can get our team some intellectual thought change, you know, possible to help them build better habits, whatever those are. And we don't necessarily have to fly everybody in. You know, it doesn't have to be this long planning process. Like we can plan it 2 weeks out and do a 2 or 3 hour kind of training that's virtual. And I think that's going to also stay with us. It doesn't mean the annual meeting is going to go away or those kinds of things, but it's just going to change and we're going to look different.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just ask this final question. Bucket lists. What do you think of bucket lists? Do you have one? Do you think that they're a good idea? What is your opinion about the bucket list idea?
You know what? I think that basically at our 20-year anniversary, I had a reporter who asked me, what have you learned about happiness in 20 years? And I did a huge thought process back to it. And I kind of I developed what I call the 4 happiness principles out of that, because these things have never really changed, which is number 1, happiness is personal. Happiness is apples happen to everyone. And the key here to your bucket list question is happiness changes as you change. I think that's what's important about a bucket list. So you might have a bucket list at 20 that looks really different than at 50, because hopefully you scratch some things off, but even some of your goals may have changed. So for me, I just shared with you that I did a recent move to a place I wanted to go to college at so I wanted to be in this part of the country for a long time. And so sometimes I really pondered it. I'm like, well, was that 18-year-old me versus me now? I'm not going to tell you my age, but versus me now, and I just kind of thought, happiness still changes as you change. And if I get here and I didn't like it, I can go somewhere else. Like I'm not tied into it. And I think a lot of times we really think that if we make a decision, we're just tied into it forever. But I think if we recognize that happiness changes as we change, so your bucket list is going to change. Mm-hmm. So every year you might look at your bucket. I think it's fine to have them, but I think it's also something to honor the transition of it. You may, like I said, wanted to go backpacking in Europe, but if you wake up, and you're 30 and you've got 4 kids, you might be thinking backpacking in Europe right now is, I'm going to be backpacking 4 kids on my back, and yep. I'm going to be rolling a wagon. I mean, it's not going to, maybe have the same appeal. Maybe that comes back to you when you're 50 or 60 or 40 or is like your kids can actually walk and they're in college, and so you do it as a family vacation. But give yourself permission for the fluidity of it to match your life. Yeah. And then the last principle is happiness is bigger than you think, which is the 31 types of happiness that we discussed. But I think that's what's important about bucket lists is flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility, adaptability, which is one of my mantras as well. We'll talk about that in a different time, because right now we will let you go. Thank you so much again. I know your time is super valuable, and I am once again really honored to be able to talk to you today. So,
to be a guest and to be your second guest.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks for celebrating Happiness Happens Month with us.
Thank you for bringing it to the world. All right, take care, Pamela. Bye-bye.
Bye.